The ways that we communicate are at multiple levels, so words are just one. The symbols really matter, and that's why I've dwelled a little on that. I think so much of what we communicate is by body language. I'm an OBGYN, and so I'm endlessly fascinated by sex and gender and the ways that women and men communicate different things. I think women need to learn more about how men communicate in body language and vice versa, because I think that as we go forward, the studies show that being able to incorporate diversity into a team is really fundamental. But that's when body language is really hard to read. And that is actually probably 80% of what's going on in a group, unfortunately, all the nonverbal communications. So I think, yes, communication is important, but I would say communication writ large in all the ways that we communicate with each other, shorthands and longhand. But the fundamental piece for all communication is listening. It just seems like things are harder right now, to me. I mean, I think opportunity seems a little reduced. So I think you prepare more for adversity because I think it's harder. And I think I spend more time helping people find opportunity than I ever had to before. So, but I think the mentor and the sponsor's job is to do that. So that's actually not FaceTime. I spend a lot of time behind the scenes. So that's, I think it's a little unfortunate that, I can't have more FaceTime, but I mean, I have to have opportunities. So we had fellows that need jobs, right? I mean, they've done 4 years of medical school, 4 years of residency, 3 years of fellowship or more. They have to have a job. I mean, their parents are probably going to come and, do something mean to me if they don't end up with jobs at the end of all of this. So we have to find jobs for the people we train, and I think that's a huge part of how I spend my time now. And I wish it were not, because I would much rather be in the weeds, kind of getting a paper written or doing something that is more face evident. Time being one of those resources, but also this incredible, and I have to do this to my faculty, and it's painful, to give them RVU targets. We do that, and I sit there and I think, if anyone knew what I'm really thinking, I'd probably be fired tomorrow because I don't like doing it. But I know that I have to cover the bills somehow, and that we have to get everyone up to a certain level. But I also can imagine, without actually experiencing it directly, how that must feel to the people coming along. And it's like, are they really asking me to do this? I mean, I can't, so people end up making some choices that maybe we don't at the end of the day want them to make, which is they give up on their academic piece and just, it looks too complicated. That's what I mean by the first step looking very, very large. Anybody hear this guy that lives at Stanford named Ehrlich on NPR this last week? So talking about how many people are on the planet. I mean, it is one place, and now it's gone from, I think I was in the 1 billion group, certainly between the 1 and 2, and now you guys are at 7 going to 8. So you think it might make a difference to have that many people around. And I mean, if you're the top 1% of humanity, but there's a lot more of those now. The other thing is, you can get mad at us, you should. None of us are deciding to die right away. Or retire. I mean, I'm not planning to die, thank you very much. So now you have 4 or 5 generations in the lab, not just at home. That's crowded. No? Does it? I mean, it could be a good thing if we figure it out. But right now, it's just like we don't really have strategies academically. We're going to have to resource share to get through this because we have to mentor the next generation. It's very clear to me that that is our first and primary goal. because that's what leads to the sustainable universe. But exactly how we do that means I think we have to invent new models. I hope so. So one of the things I did when I left California is I went to a funny town called Pittsburgh, and they had an empty lab. So we move in this lab, I set up shop, and they give me $25,000 to start my lab. And at the end of the year, they had me come back and describe how I spent my first year, and their $25,000. And I hear the treasurer's report, and they have much, much more than $25,000. To give to anyone. So they had a huge corpus that we then respun into a research institute that I was in charge of populating the clinical research portfolio. And over 15 years, that's what I did. And we did a lot with industry. We did a lot with biotech, if we could find it. It wasn't so prevalent in the early 90s. And yeah, I mean, we have to be uber resourceful for who we partner with, and I don't think that distinction makes as much sense. If it ever did make sense, it doesn't make any sense now. I think now we have to become an expert in something, and then we have to figure out how to put the experts together to get jobs done that are important jobs that need to be done, and not just product development, which was the old industry model. I think industry is challenged to come up with something more relevant. And certainly academics is under the gun to come up with relevance for its vision. So I think coming up with some kind of relevant vision that weaves together the resources that we have as a planet is fundamental. And people are always going to be tempted to go back into the P&L model of profit and loss and make a product and sell it for the most money. Scientists, we hope, are the ones least tempted by that. I mean, that's the professionalism piece. We hope doctors aren't that tempted by that. It would be awful, really, if you went to the doctor and you thought that they were just looking at you as dollars and cents. And it would be really a misappropriation if scientists thought of themselves as just here to make a product that sold well. So I think all of us have to stick together so that we don't get utilized in a way that isn't the noble nature of our professions. I was president of the SGI, Society for Gynecologic Investigation, and I had a very controversial speaker come. I didn't think she was going to be controversial, but her name is Paula Stefan, and she wrote a book on how economics shapes science. And she gave a talk and she showed the peril, because NIH took this piece and the industry took this piece, and there was the middle that no one took, and that was translational science and clinical research. And she said, you know, we've overtrained, we haven't really gotten it right. NIH never intended to have the whole thing. It always intended a partnership with industry. Where's the partnership? You know, where's the beef? And people came up afterwards and they said, how could you invite this horrible speaker? And you know, it's like, because she said we need a paradigm shift, right? We're not working the way we designed it 50 years ago. Let's think about what we need to do. If, you know, the people that didn't want their cheese to be moved were very irate. And the people that knew that there needed to be change were like, yeah, but we have to think about it. It won't happen unless we do. So I think it would be great to continue this conversation about what should it look like and how can we take the resources that we have and redistribute them, share them in a way that makes much more sense. So we don't want to push our 80-year-olds out if they're still productive, but they can't get paid the way they've been. That's how it looks to me. This is a very practical chair hat. I can't afford them at their current pay line, but they're welcome to stay as long as they don't breathe too much. And no, I'm serious, they have to be contributing. But now the amount that they have to contribute is actually more time and less resources. And they have to show that they can participate in the fabric of the department and do good. And then you guys have to be ready for the opportunities, because I think they're going to come in hidden forms, not necessarily the same ones as before. But you're going to have to participate in the invention of the new model, of the new paradigm, and you're going to see things that we don't see. That's the thing, is I don't know it all, and nor does anybody else. But when you're looking, and you will be looking very hard for opportunity, then you will see things that we don't see, and you will remember, hopefully, when you get past all that, to give back to, and be open to the next paradigm shift, which I anticipate there will be one, because the way you train people is going to be not exactly quite the way you trained yourself. In a lot of little ways, but one of bigger way is at the promotion and appointment and tenure committee. So I will be the advocate for the team. So in the past you had to be the last author or the first author, or you couldn't get promoted. And even you couldn't get tenure unless you got X number of grants and all this kind of stuff. Sometimes we've shot ourselves in the foot by having these artificial rules about who goes first, second, third, and fourth, and then, lead dog versus, dog team. And so I think what we have to do is say, if I took a person out of the team, would the team function the way it's functioning now? If the team is functioning well, and I subtract the person out, will it hurt the team? If the answer to that is yes, and that person wasn't going to get promoted because they didn't get their ticket punched in the other ways, then I'm going to make sure that person gets promoted. And I will. I can be very persuasive. And almost always the committee will vote with me on that one. But I think what we haven't done is that test, that little acid test, like, can we actually survive without these people? So recently someone who never really wanted to be the lead, but always wanted to be the anchor in the lab, came up for tenure. And the person had trained so many people, had done so much good work, but had never really been the lead. And we got that person tenure because they were just such a fabulous anchor. And so you kind of have to articulate what the role was. And this person wasn't so good at figuring out that they were an anchor. It was easier for me to see that they were an anchor than they could see that they were an anchor. So I think we need a new category. That's a new category, an anchor. And you can't run a lab without those people. I had the same lab technician for 20 years. And I thought of every way to retain her. But after a while, I couldn't. I ran out of options at my university for retaining her as an anchor. It was very hard and very painful. And I still think it was a mistake to have to not have more for her to aspire to. And so I think we need pathways that are career pathways. And so we're talking about getting started, but we also need to make sure that people stay in who are productive and who are members of that team. So team science is going to really make us think about how to retain those teams. And I think when you think about being part of the team, you have to think about how you can do that too, because you want to retain those members too. So when you're part of that team, you have to make sure that you are thinking more than about your own progress, right? Even at the level that you're at now, you have to be supportive of one another, and it does go better. I have rules for asking myself, did I think of all the options? Now, when I'm teaching medicine, I say, did you make the complete differential diagnosis? You look like you might be a doctor. So if you don't make the complete differential diagnosis and put some zebras down at the bottom of the list, will you sometimes make a mistake? Yeah, and so I think for yourself, you plan, yes, plan A this is really my preferred plan. But what else could happen? That's the planning for, I said it really to be a little bit cheeky, planning for failure. Just to make people hear that word, right? What is the worst case scenario? What's the weirdest disease the patient could have? And you have to be disciplined to do that. And so it is a form of discipline, because we think of focus as a form of discipline that we all endorse, but actually making a longer list and actually forcing yourself to do lateral thinking takes as much discipline as staying focused sometimes. It doesn't come intuitively to think about the other things. So you just have to be even a little more strict with yourself, but to make yourself not focused all the time. Can you do that?